What up, people? I said, what up, people? Welcome to another edition of the Salty Thoughts of Mike Steph podcast, featuring the one and only Mike Steph, best in the world at what he does. Yes, this week, this week's full-fledged episode of the mothership, the flagship, if you will, is a long time coming. A long time coming. This is something I am not the type of individual. As much as I love to keep things underneath, underneath the veil, up my sleeve, give y'all little surprises. A lot of times I usually kind of show my cards where it is, but not this week. Not this week. This week, I have an individual that is going to be on my platform that is an expert in what we're going to talk about this week, and that is the NBA free agency, free agent frenzy, if you will. Um, the funny thing is, I was trying to think of a witty way of saying this. I was going to be sponsored this week. Everybody knows that my sponsor of the podcast is my lovely wife, otherwise known as the Lewis whatever. I don't say that term anymore. But my lovely wife is the sponsor. But I was like, this needs a little bit extra pizzazz. Not, babe, I'm sorry, I didn't mean anything right, but a little bit extra pizzazz. So I said, you know what? I could go back to Sesame Street times and saying, how they used to sponsor the episodes. This week's sponsored. This episode sponsored by the letter A. This week's sponsored by the letter. Well, this week's episode is sponsored by two numbers: the number 5 and the number 19. And you're probably like, 5, 19. Uh, what do they have in common except that what they're prime numbers? If I'm mistaken, I'm not sure. Well, five marks 5 years. 5 years of the existence of an entity that I am a part of. I have bigged up, shoot, like for 5 years, and just a collection of voices that have been amplified for 5 years, from east to west coast, from north to south. And that would bring me to my next number, 19. Yes, 19. So if you haven't figured out what 5 is, which is 5 years, and the number 19 and what they have together, that would be the 19 Media Group. And I've had various people, various individuals that grace the stage, grace the screen, along with yours truly, from the 19 Media Group. I've had Tyler Tyler McDowell Blanken from Gimmick Infringement. I've had Brad Winchester from Gimmick Infringement. I've had Desmond Powell formerly from Hip to the Games, now the Mid Post Podcast. And in my early years, under the different moniker of Donnie Ooh, oh shoot, that just makes me skeeve a little bit. I had my partner in crime, my co-host of HGF, the Mojo King. But never before have I had this individual up. So I figured the time is right. We're talking about NBA. I believe, one of the biggest things that happened in the NBA probably circle around one of the teams that he liked, if I'm not mistaken, but we will find that out. And to tell you the truth, I think I'm rambling enough. So I'm going to bring this gentleman on the screen for everybody to Frally. Oh, guess what? Here he is. The co-founder of 19 Media Group. Also, co-host of the NBA Baseline Podcast, or the Baseline NBA Podcast, Warren Shore. Warren, welcome to the Salty Thoughts of Mike Steph. How you doing?
We in the building, brother. We in the building. And let me give you your kudos. Let me just say, you can tell that you flow like you rap because all of the poetic, the double entendres, everything that's kind of going on in the intro as well too. You can see why you do this thing. But thank you so much for allowing me to grace your platform, be on this joint, and spend a couple of moments here talking about the NBA and a whole bunch of other stuff too that I'm sure we're going to get into, man. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. So we're going to get on the road right now because we have a jam-packed edition. There's so many things I want to ask this brother. So first and foremost, because I am I do emanate from the city of New York. I do emanate from the borough of Brooklyn. I do emanate from the neighborhood of Crown Heights. But more importantly, I emanate from the city of champions, champions, the New York Knicks. The New York Knicks won their first championship in 53 years. Now, before we get into all the shenanigans that's going on in the world of the NBA offseason, I'm going to ask this gentleman right here. First, let's say this is going to be a two-part question. First, your thoughts on the Knicks' historic, and that's not hyperbole, historic playoff run to the championship. And secondly, would you have ever thought that the Knicks winning a championship would send reverberations through the NBA, in which we're about to talk about when it comes to this free agent / offseason period? The floor is yours.
Well, first and foremost, the Knicks earned that championship, and he said no hyperbole at all. This was a team effort in every sense of the word, from the coaching to the bench, and obviously, the starting five. What they were able to do after the first round of the playoffs versus the Atlanta Hawks really just turned their entire season around and went on, like I said, an historic run. That it was as a basketball fan, like you see, like they reached like kind of like that basketball nirvana, if you will. I kept saying on our show, like they were kind of going Super Saiyan on people, like what has happened? Like they were just not going to lose, and you could just see it. It was palpable. You could feel it. And then luckily I had the chance of being in the city, for the final 3 games of the series. So they ultimately close out, and just how the city was alive and feeling the energy from that. It was an amazing, amazing situation to watch. And, an 8th champion here in 8 straight years. But the Knicks did it, man. Like they rocked out. And while I've said this to others, on our official show, and, maybe I'm pulling the veil behind the corner a little too, I thought they were going to win. I just, as a Celtics fan, I couldn't verbalize that on my show and on my podcast. So I picked against them, but I thought they were going to win in 6, and they ultimately did it in 5. But a Herculean and amazing, amazing, amazing effort by this Knicks team. Down to the last person, man. It was a really amazing situation to watch. And shout out Mike Brown. He had a mandate, he delivered, and now we'll see what's next for them in the upcoming season, bro.
Do you see how the number 5 came back into play?
Talk to him.
It's a beautiful thing. Like, I've been a Knicks fan, for the uninitiated, but I've been a Knicks fan since, I want to say, 84. Right. So that's 8. So 42 years I've been a Knicks fan. Right. Don't get me wrong. I supported the Golden State Warriors. I liked them. I always liked them from afar and everything. So it's not even like me being a hypocrite saying, it's no jumping on the bandwagon. I was a fan from Marvin Webster, from Ernie Grunfeld, from Rory Sparrow, from Louis Orr, the whole night, when you used to come on Channel 9 and we could only see road games because that's what we got. So prior to Patrick Ewing, when Dave DeBusschere was the one that went into the bowl and picked out the envelope that ended up being the first lottery pick ever in the NBA, Patrick Ewing. So I still have to pinch myself after a while to realize that, we are the champions.
Yes, sir.
The New York Knicks are the champions, not the champions of 2K. Because, of course, anytime I play 2K, that's the only time I was able to see them lift up the trophy. Even back in the days of NBA Live, only time I was able to see them pick up the trophy was in video games. But in my lifetime, they're the champions. Real quick tangent. Last week, I'm at an orientation for my daughter, for my youngest daughter, Kay. She's going to SUNY Albany. So we had an orientation last week. And I don't know. I guess subconsciously I went to stunt. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna have my Knicks hat on. I'm gonna rock my Knicks t-shirt on. But I really forgot of what I had on. So we're standing there, we're waiting for orientation to begin. A couple of the students that was helping with orientation come up, and it was like Knicks in 5. So I'm like, huh? Knicks in 5. I said, oh, yeah, Knicks in 5. Couple other guys. Another guy came up. He was like, Congratulations on y'all. I know it's been a long time. I ain't gonna lie. I jumped off the bandwagon. I went to Brooklyn. I said, "Oh,
Oh, one
you
of
went
those.
you went to Brooklyn." I'm not sure if you're familiar with my terminology for the Nets. My terminology for the Nets, even though it doesn't really, it's not as apropos as it was back then. I call it the Nets a gentrification Nets
Word.
because
Wow.
based on based on all the changes that's happened in Brooklyn, all emanated from the Barclays Center being, being built.
Yeah.
Then they tried to quick start it. They tried to jump start it when they got the when they got two of the three from Boston, when they got KG
Pierce.
and Paul Pierce and Jason Terry. They tried to do that, and I'm like, listen, that's never gonna work in New York. It's never going to work in New York. Never, if you want to convert Knicks fans into Nets fans, you cannot bring Celtics that like not even um afterthoughts or also ran from the Celtics. You're bringing KG and Paul Pierce from the Celtics to New York. That's never going to happen. All right, that fell by the wayside. And then they tried the quick fix with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, and later on James Harden, and that didn't work. So I'm loving the fact that the Nets are in their way. But like I said, I went on the tangent, but I'm gonna bring it right back.
You good?
What I have a question for you. What do you feel, or how do you feel about Kevin Durant at that time ducking the smoke? How I used to it. Like, he wanted his cake and eat it too. He wanted to be in New York, but he didn't want the scrutiny and the pressure of bringing the Knicks a championship. He wanted to take the easy way out. And then Kyrie, I'm not gonna say the same about Kyrie, because in 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 my in my opinion, Kyrie doesn't duck smoke. A lot of times he goes toward the smoke. So it wasn't about that, but it was like, all right, my man want me to come to Brooklyn, I'm gonna come to Brooklyn, I'm gonna ride with my man. But KD specifically, what do you feel about him going to Brooklyn, failing in Brooklyn, and failing in Brooklyn, and then even now being asked to talk like, man, you know what? If I was the Knicks, I'll take it for all it's worth, because what, it's gonna be another 53 years. I feel like that's bitter grapes. Remember, the Knicks wasn't cool. So we wasn't cool for you to come. The only person out of those triumphant of big players, superstar players from that era that I always give props to is Melo. Melo was the only one that came and said, you know what, put it on my back. Unfortunately, it
Right.
didn't happen, but he was the only one that had enough cojones to say, you know what, I'm gonna go to New York. But with all that being said, how do you feel about KD, the move that he did, and him being kind of pigheaded, like, yeah, I did what I did, and good for y'all. I feel like he's bitter.
Katie's an interesting person to kind of always try to figure out, Mike. Like, I think it's like you said perfectly. Like, he's not somebody who wants smoke. He'll smoke you on Twitter, right? But when it comes to like those certain levels of responsibility at time, like he just wants to hoop, and I can respect that to a certain degree. But it's like, listen, he's hasn't won at the highest stages without a significant level of help, and you can say that about a lot of guys. But him coming to Brooklyn was a failed experiment, and I think as you alluded to and outlined their history, that's happened a couple of times here now, and they tried to take the easy path by accumulating stars, and things just didn't go the way that they would have hoped. Yes, COVID ended up happening in the midst of some of that stuff as well too, which was weird. And then Kyrie started acting a little bit, weird, I guess, for the time. But it's an unfortunate situation for Durant, who's still obviously a first ballot Hall of Famer. But I can agree with his time in Brooklyn not being one that he's going to look on as so fondly. He will always say that, hey, you know what? He stepped on the line in that series against Milwaukee, and maybe they would have won that series. Maybe, but coulda, woulda, shoulda. It didn't happen that way. Durant is now off to his second team since being in Brooklyn. Now he's in Houston now as well too. So, and I don't know if he'll finish his career in Houston. There's all types. His name is involved in all types of trade rumors again, and maybe he doesn't mind that. I'm not here to judge, but I do think his Hall of Fame career is one that is going to be scrutinized. But I don't think he cares one way or the
Yeah, that sounds about right. Um, Now, being the fact that we're in a era that we've never been in before in recent time as the Knicks being the world champions. I feel personally that we still don't get the credit that's due to us. It's almost like, well, due to them not having to face the number one seed, the Detroit Pistons, they didn't have to worry about Boston. They didn't have to worry about OKC or whatever. But regardless, we won the championship. Now, now with all these moves that we're going to talk about, it's almost like they're saying, well, y'all lucky, y'all should be happy y'all got your chip now because with all this retooling of all these rosters,
Yeah.
you're not gonna repeat. Now, isn't it funny? How do you feel? Do you feel that the Knicks, the way they structured their team, like you said, a true team, one through 12, and 1 through 15, if you want to think about it, the way they structured their team, do you think that's going to be emulated or that's trying to be emulated with these offseason moves we're going to talk about? Do you think that them proving that you can do it the way that they did, not having to tank, not have to go after the big fish in free agency, but just putting pieces together, slowly building, and being smart with the salary cap or whatever? Do you think that this championship has potentially reshaped the NBA going forward?
The answer is two-part for me. So in short, yes. I think what we've seen in the last few seasons really is that you need the depth. And what New York has been able to do by having as much depth that it has is something that a lot of general managers and presidents are reiterating is like, hey, we need multiple bodies, especially, and you need bodies that are cost effective, cost efficient, because you can't have guys who take up 70 to 80% of your cap and there's only 2 or 3 players. You got to fill out the rest of the roster, not only for injury concerns, but just for the overall continuity of a team. So New York, and because Brunson has been a unselfish superstar, and he took less money off rip in essence to be able to, so that the Knicks could be able to make some moves. That's something that's very special and I think unique to New York's situation. Other NBA players are so consumed with getting the dollar and getting as much as they can right now. I can't knock that, but that does inhibit your ability to make a deep roster if, again, so much money is tied up into 1 or 2 guys. So, yes, I think teams are going to try to be smarter. Where I've been saying for a long time, not to get into the nerdy side of the basketball conversation, but where teams need to more invest now is in their player development. It is in their scouting because you have got to be able to find guys. You need cost control on rookie scale contracts. Like you're not everyone's going to have a Wemby. We understand that. But can you get somebody who's going to give you, 12 points a game and 6 or 7 rebounds who can plug into your rotation, whether that's starting or coming off the bench? Can you get somebody who's more of a specialist, again, on a 5-year cost control rookie contract? That's where this is going to be because most veterans are not going to say, hey, I will take the MLE or I'm going to take a veterans minimum. The York situation, I think, was very, very unique to them. But to your point in terms of the disrespect, I think what's also happened is that the league has now kind of course corrected. Every champion up until this year was going in as a repeat champion in terms of odds. Like, if you're a betting person, I think because we've seen 8 straight years where that now we've seen a new champion and the Knicks did it in a pseudo unconventional way. That's why they're getting the air quote disrespect in terms of like not being the favorite to repeat next year. Not so much based on like, oh, we don't believe your raps as much as like, well, there's been 8 straight new champions. So, you know what? It's like maybe, to say that there's going to be the Knicks are going to repeat when we haven't seen that happen in 8 straight years. I think that's a little bit what has to do with it as well, too. In addition to San Antonio and OKC, kind of retooling and especially with the Spurs getting a little bit just younger, getting better by terms of the years in the league. What I didn't understand when the odds first came out, though, was how Boston was ahead of New York. Like that was disrespect. Those odds have since corrected themselves, right? I'm even looking right now. Boston somehow was still 4th in title odds, which is perplexing as all hell. But the Knicks are now the number 1 team in the East in terms of title odds, with OKC and San Antonio, depending on what site you're looking at, as number 1s and 2s. If you're New York, you don't care, like, because you just proved it, right? Brian Windhorst has a great saying that he says on his podcast. And it's like, winning a championship means you never have to say you're sorry. They won. And at the end of the day, it's Rhapsody. So, congrats to the Knicks. I think they're going to be very, very formidable moving forward. They also are in the midst of some cost saving moves. They let Mitchell Robinson go and, They just replaced him with Andre Drummond. I don't know, but they re-signed Shamet, et cetera, et cetera. And I think this next team, led by Jalen Brunson, specifically what he's able to do, and the resurgence of Karl Anthony Towns is a formidable team in the Eastern Conference for years to come.
See, I appreciate that. I agree with never having to say sorry for winning a championship. Um, I have said this on shows since the championship win that no matter what, you can never take the fact away that we won the NBA championship in the year 2026. Never. That's forever, right? Up until we get eliminated. If we get eliminated next season, whether we don't make the playoffs, whether we get eliminated in the first round, second round, championship round, or the finals, we are the reigning champion until then. That means up until at least next April, I can walk around. All our Knicks fans can walk around with our chest stuck out, head held high, and say, we're the champions. Doesn't matter what y'all do.
Yeah.
Even now, I mean, even this past year, everybody thought we should have run away with the East. Oh, Halliburton is down. JT is down. This far and away, they should be the number one team in the East. We were the third seed. The way things broke, we was able to get home court advantage throughout the playoffs until we got to the finals. But that to me was two things. One, this team knew that the regular season, especially how the previous season that ended, the regular season, while it is important for seeding, nothing was going to be on their quote unquote tombstone at the end of the season until they got to the playoffs. So make sure you get to the playoffs healthy, number one, and then have enough intelligence, have enough basketball IQ that I believe they do both individually and cumulatively, that they were going to be able to figure it out, which they did. So same thing. If you think that Brunson's chip on his shoulder is going to lessen, I don't think that's how he's made. Now you've seen a little bit of glimpse of the real him, so to speak, because it's like, all right, the goal was done, so I can afford to let go. It's not like there's still no work to be done. Yeah, there's still work to be done, but work to be done to stay at the top, not work to be done to get to the top. So I really think that as long as he has that mindset, which I believe is a forever mindset, because shoot, he got 2 championships in college, so it's not like he rested on his laurels when he was in college, right? So why would he not do that here? As long as that mindset is there and everybody is in lockstep of this is his franchise, it's going to be molded in his image, I really think that, can we repeat? Of course, I would love a repeat. If we come up short, mere bag of shells. Listen, it's my first championship. All my sports teams, the Jets, they won in 69. I was born in 76. The Mets won in 86. I was born in 76. So I was 10 years old. I thought that's how things went. The Knicks, okay, they got to the champion. I mean, they got to the finals in 94. They got it back in 99. All through my teenage years. Oh shoot, tell you the truth, the majority of the years that Ewing was in, we was in the playoffs. So did we win? No. Did we win the Ultimate Prize? No, but it wasn't like we was a bum team up until I got into my 30s, and I'm like, it seemed like the season would just drag. We would always be like 15 and 12, 12 and 15, 12 and 19. I'm talking about the David Lee years, the Nate Robinson years, and then and then it seemed like we'd be all right up until February, and it's like we would get that murderer's row in February. Kobe would always come to the Garden in February. Like all the stars would come to the Garden in February, right before All-Star break. And next thing you know, by All-Star break, we're 15 games under 500, and the season's over. But David Lee got a double streak. Yeah, that's what we're going for.
I remember. Shout out David Lee. He was a big fantasy player of mine. He gave me a good guy on a losing team, but he got me those points.
I feel bad for David Lee in this respect. They got rid of him right before the Golden State dynasty. Because I remember when I remember when he got he didn't get traded. Did he get traded or he signed with Golden State? I can't remember, but I know when he went to Golden State. I actually was following Golden State from afar because he went to Golden State, and then Brandon Tierney of ESPN fame back in the day, he had went out to Oakland, I guess, for pretty much to the Bay for media thing, and I was a fan of Brandon Tierney back in the day, so I kind of followed what was going on out there. So for him to kind of get cut loose before the dynasty, it's like tough luck, but I guess he could look at his bank account and smile.
Yeah, do a lot better than you and I.
So we're gonna go into the NBA offseason. Now, normally I would say free agent frenzy, but in reality, this year it was more about the impact was more about trades than actually free agency. Because July 1st used to be like appointment TV. It's still appointment TV, but appointment TV because at midnight, I believe ESPN would have NBA Today or what have you. They would get on at midnight and all the pre signings going on, and it wouldn't be official until the 6th. But this year was a lot of trades right after the finals and trades leading up to and on July 1st. So this is your area of expertise, especially like you do what you do. So I am going to just put out some topics, and I'm going to ask you to elaborate on these topics. And first and foremost, close to your heart, not so much mine, but close to your heart, would be Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown being traded to the Philadelphia 76ers for Paul George and some draft picks or whatever. A lot of people are saying this was a salary dump. Well, that's at least okay. Matter of fact, let me rephrase that. In the lead up to this trade, you had a sparring back and forth with Jaylen Brown, Stephen A. Smith, various personalities on ESPN, so forth, and a narrative being painted of pretty much like taking to task his character because he had the audacity to say that this past season was his most favorite season.
Yeah.
Oh, how could you say that? Y'all got bumped out the first round. First time in history, y'all lost a 3-1 lead. I understand both point of view. Was it bad timing? Perhaps. But he was speaking his truth. Can you get mad at a man for speaking his truth? Whether you agree with it or not, you really can't. Right?
Nope. Yeah.
So with all that leading up to it, and then of course being dangled in the Giannis Antetokounmpo sweepstakes in which Giannis ended up going to Miami. Yeah, okay. Good luck with that. So everybody thought that if anything, that could make sense. But for him to get traded, not only get traded, but get traded for Paul George, well, understandably because that salaries match, but more importantly, get traded to a division rival. The team that eliminated y'all, that potentially can be allow him to be a roadblock into whatever success that you might want to attain in the foreseeable future, to me, in the fact he's in his prime. Your thoughts on Jaylen Brown being traded, but probably more importantly, your thoughts on the narrative that's been built around Jaylen Brown, especially this year, but I want to say at least from the Olympics a couple years ago when he was left off the Olympic team, but they brought in Derek Wright. So this narrative that's been building over the last years, I'm asking you, Mr. Celtic himself, your thoughts.
I think Jaylen Brown absolutely has some sort of label on him within front offices. Has he earned that? I don't think so. I don't know him personally, but we all see players get these kind of monikers, and it just happens, and you can't shake it. And I remember when he was drafted, I was talking about this on X the other day. I'll never forget him going into the draft. People were like, oh, he thinks he's too smart. He's coming out of Cal or whatever. And they were like, oh, they think. I was like, well, why is that an issue? Right? Like, they want people to just be dumb jocks or whatever. Like, it didn't really make sense to me. And then you've seen everything that he's done over the course of his career. He is a little bit of an activist. He's very much in terms of like building his community. And I cannot see anything wrong with that. Where the narrative, though, or the conversation on Jaylen Brown is there's a lot of noise, just a lot of noise. And so, yes, you have that early moniker that maybe hasn't escaped him. Yes, Team USA decided that they didn't want him on the team after winning, the NBA championship and being the finals MVP. And okay, fine, all of those things. Yes, he says what he says, and he's not, he's outspoken. But there's other players who are outspoken. What it boils down to, though, still, like there's some sort of value proposition here with Jaylen Brown that people do not equate to in terms of what he produces. And we're not going to get to the analytical conversation, but what he produces, what he brings to a team, and then just how much it costs in essence to do that. And that's where if I can side with that to some degree, because you can ultimately say like, hey, do you think this person is worth 60, 70 million dollars when they're going to be 32 or 33 years old? And worth is not the right terminology here. It's just a terminology that we utilize in sports. But can their production and value in your mind, can you reconcile those two things? And I can understand where some people may not think that that's the same situation. Like it can't work, because our minds as sports fans are still kind of determined as like, okay, this money should be reserved for the top 1% of players, if you will. Jaylen Brown is not within the top 1%. He's very good, but he's not within that upper echelon for most general managers' taste. So if you think he's a top 25 player, you have a hard time saying, hey, I want to pay him 60 to $70 million. If he's a top 10 player, that becomes a little bit more bearable for you in a sense to. I think that's what it came down to. And I'm working with fresh information because Brad Stevens did have his press conference today. And, more or less he did say that having Tatum and Brown specifically making so much money as part of the cap, it didn't give them the roster flexibility and allow them to create the depth that we talked about a little bit earlier that he felt was necessary for this team to succeed. However, all that said, Jaylen Brown has gotten a raw deal in terms of his evaluation, in terms of the moniker that's put upon him. And while the outside world may say he doesn't do himself any favors, I don't understand why a person can't be vocal about what they think they're worth and the things that they're doing. Because he's not out here harming. He hasn't been arrested. He's not in scandals or any of those other things. And we forget other players who are. That's where I have the biggest problem, I think, with the Jaylen Brown conversation. It's just like he's just talking about his own personal value and what he feels like he brings to organization. And everybody's trying to like downgrade him for whatever reason, while we let other guys slide for things that are a lot more egregious.
Now, I actually wrote a note before we started recording when it came to this topic I knew we was going to get into, and especially that specific point of people don't believe he's quote unquote worth the money for his value, his input on the court. I feel like number one, he should hate the player. Hate the game. Don't hate the player, right? Because once the salaries balloon that exploded to the point that somebody can make $60,000, $70 million in 1 year. If that's the going rate, then that's the going rate. Yeah. It's not his fault that his extension at the time just coincided with the big bump in salaries. I know the NBA and the NFL are two totally different entities, but in a lot of ways they aren't. Because unfortunately, the NBA is trying to emulate the NFL in a lot of the negative ways than instead of the positive ways. So it's the same thing when it comes to the quarterback market. The highest paid quarterback is not always the best quarterback, it's not always the best quarterback in the league. It's like, oh well, his contract came up at the time in which, all right, he's the quarterback, he's a franchise quarterback for that team. Well, then he gets the going rate. At no time was Kirk Cousins the best quarterback in the league. But guess what? Kirk Cousins, number one, bet on himself with all these franchise tags. And then when he was able to cash in, at the going rate. Say Matthew Stafford, great player. Good matter of fact, great player. Is he worth the money that he was getting paid or he was getting paid? No. I mean, Jordan made, off the top of my head, throughout his whole career, what, $40 million? $50 million, if that, and I'm probably overstating it at the time. But he was
made
the
a little
best
more.
player.
Jordan had one of those contracts. I don't remember what it was. He was either 20 or 30 million he made like in 1 year, and people like lost their their ish, at that time. But it was like, do you know what he's worth to the NBA? Not even just the Chicago Bulls. So, but right, again, it's all value propositions, and again, you cannot be mad at the players and the system that's created because it was agreed upon by both the Players Association, the governorship, and the league as well. Like everybody's involved in this system. But now you want to say, well, hey, Boston signed this guy. He'll make $64 million by the time in his final year at 32 years old. And that's where you're like, okay, is he a floor raiser in the way that the top echelon players really are? And I think that's where people are getting caught up on. It's the money, but also what they perceive his talent to be able to do on a team, even at 28 points a game, which he averaged this year, and whatever it was, 6 and 4, like those are really good numbers. But there's just people who don't believe that he is as good as his numbers state, and they're going to have a hard time wanting to pay $65 million. But the Philadelphia 76ers are not one of those teams. The Boston Celtics ultimately were.
I think it all goes by, I wouldn't even say reputation, but what people, the type of player that people want to perception of a player. Like, okay, for years it was LeBron. LeBron is up here, Melo, D Wade, that was always the top tier, right? And then Kawhi Leonard, to a certain degree, he kind of, he didn't really start showing out until toward the end of his Spurs timing, but he was in that, he could have been in that conversation. But because Kawhi Leonard wasn't a quote unquote household name, no, we're not gonna. That's not for Kawhi. That's for KD. That's for Steph. Oh, but it's not for everybody. Like, for instance, James Harden. James Harden probably made $500 million.
For sure.
But what has he ever done? What floor has he ever risen for a team? None. Even now, people are falling over themselves to try to give James Harden another multi-year extension. But yet, Jaylen Brown got a championship, led his team both on and off the court. You don't never hear anything wrong, anything bad about Jaylen Brown, but yet you're trying to knock this man off his pedestal for what? Because he cashed in at the right time? Like, it's insane. I have a very bad relationship with the word narrative. I hate narratives. Yeah. I really hate narratives. And I hate when it seems like the media is hell bent on creating a narrative to fit their liking. Not and be darned about what it does to the player, what it does to their family. What, like, off topic, but Russell Westbrook, right? For years, nobody could say anything about his work ethic. Nobody could say anything about his leadership. Nobody could say anything about pretty much nothing. He didn't get himself trouble off the court, but all of a sudden it got to a point where Russell Westbrook was public enemy number one. You had people literally calling him out his name, Russell Westbrook, and then he's not supposed to react.
Yeah.
Back in the days with Chris Bosh, and you had Skip Bayless talking about Pot Spice or Spice Bosh or whatever, and Chris Bosh like, look, my man, I'm a man, I'm a husband, I'm a father. Listen, you can critique however you want, but what you're doing is out of line. And I, as a man, I have a right to say that it's out of line. And I'm not going to be a villain because it's out of line. So this narrative that's going on with Jaylen Brown, I feel like in reality, the media then probably created a monster on the court, because if you thought he didn't have a chip on his shoulder back then, imagine what he's going to do now in Philly. Personally, tell you the truth, I think Philly probably the perfect spot for him to be, both on the court and off the court, because Philly seemed like the type of time that if you are a man of the people and you're really trying to better make what you call better the people in the community, I think they'll rock with you hard. They'll ride with you hard. So I really think out of all the places that he could have been, I think that's probably the best place for him. One last thing before we jump to the next little transaction. Do you believe that in some ways the media at large, whether I'm not even going to talk about local media because I don't know anything about Boston, but the media at large is literally is making this more of a not even racism but colorism. Like, okay, we're doing which guard, Jason Tatum, he's worth the money. Jaylen Brown, they make the same, but he's not. Jason Tatum, pretty much as far as you know, keeps to himself. He's about his family. Maybe if he's doing anything community-wise, he's not as vocal about it. He's quiet. He's safe. Jaylen Brown, he's not too safe. And just the fact of Jason Tatum is of a lighter shade than Jaylen Brown. Do you believe that might have something to do with it? Unfortunately.
I don't think so as much. I think primarily because Tatum is pretty quiet. He's very reserved. So, what he looks like has very little, I think, to do from my lens in terms of just how boisterous he is. There's a lot of people wish he had more fire, right? I wish he was more vocal. Jaylen is just that. And, maybe that plays into it to some degree in terms of wanting to pack him up, as he said. But I don't think in relation to Tatum, like that's really in terms of the conversation. Just most people, if you polled 100 NBA evaluators right now, you'd probably get 98% that say, hey, Jason Tatum's a better player than Jaylen Brown. Jaylen at time has played better than Jason Tatum. Like that is fact. Like that has happened. But the overall evaluation of Tatum as a kind of more humble and quieter superstar, while still very, very confident, that I think is where the dichotomy of those two players are very, very different. But you bring up something that is a whole nother podcast in terms of, Black athletes, specifically in Boston. I have some conversations and some knowledge of some different things, within that space. There's the whole thing why LeBron said he will probably never, ever play in Boston, although they're still on his proverbial list as of right now, as we record, but I don't ever see that happening because there is some stuff going on there. But I think Jaylen embraced the city in a way that might have squashed a lot of that type of stuff. But when you're talking about overall media perception, that's an interesting, kind of way to take it. I think a lot of this is formed really at the general manager and talent evaluation level, that media is then reporting what they're hearing from these general managers. And if it were me, if I were fed that information, would I be repeating it? In some ways, it's their job. Like, hey, if you have a source and the source said this, I don't think there's media members out there making up things per se, as much as like, hey, every media member has their own opinion. But if they're getting sourced information from front office executives about the value or perceived value of Jaylen Brown, it is their duty to report that, even if it does become salacious, like Bobby Marks' statement and says like Jaylen Brown was even the seventh best player on his own team. Like the eye test says that's complete bullshit. But at the end of the day, Bobby Marks got misquoted. Or not misquoted, he was quoted, but didn't get the full context of what he was stated or what was told to him. So again, we're in a really strange media era where we're going to take something that will give us the most salacious outburst and takes to get people going, and then have conversations that sometimes are not, as you alluded to, not to the benefit of the player, but more importantly, not to the benefit of the human being. And that's where I think I wish our media was a little bit different and our landscape was different in terms of how we cover sports.
Piggybacking on what you're saying about the way people have been portrayed in the media over the last couple of years, actually, I'm going to skip what I was going to at the one transaction I was going to talk about and skip to this one. I'll double back. John Morant to Portland. Everybody knows about his stint with the Memphis Grizzlies. Him going to Portland, I believe, is probably the best thing that could happen. It gives him a second lease of life. There's a lot of scuttlebutt of what was behind, why specifically Portland, why specifically that area. The investment that people have into him. Maybe you could elaborate. But your thoughts on Ja Morant to Portland? Do you think this is a good move for Portland? Do you believe that the environment will allow Ja to reach his full potential? And do you, most importantly, believe that um, the worst, quote unquote, is behind Ja going forward?
I want to believe it, and I'm rooting for Ja to be successful. And while we know some of his explosiveness is still not the same for the many injuries, despite the off the court stuff, Portland is an interesting city, and we just came off the Jailblazers documentary, and folks talking about how that city, similar to Boston, sometimes has its own racial relations, but you have to be a certain type of African American to be accepted there. I'm interested to see. Like I said, I don't live in the city. I don't know what it's like to speak to that in any real way. But I think for Portland, it's an intriguing fit. It's not a move that I saw coming in any way, shape, or form. But how I've rationalized this, I said is Ja is like 26 years old. Dame is 34. Drew Holiday, I think, is 35, 36 or whatever. Scoot hasn't quite lived up to the expectations, though he did have a nice little playoff run against the San Antonio Spurs. So they're betting younger, and it didn't cost them asset wise a lot to bring him in, but the fit is weird. it's just a weird fit, and they are guard heavy in a way that I don't quite understand how they're going to suss that out. But we're still talking here on July 6th, so a lot of time between now and the NBA season begins, and we'll see what shape the roster ultimately takes. But for Jeremy Grant and some filler, like sure, Chris Murray, Keegan's brother, as we said on the baseline, so like all right, why not? I mean, you take somebody with that level of upside. Yeah, it's expensive, because he's in the $45 to $50 million range as well too. But ultimately, I don't dislike it for Portland. I got to just see what the rest of they do, and then obviously for Memphis' side, they needed to move on. They needed to reset their table. We'll see if Jeremy Grant stays in Memphis or not. He could be another person that they flip for maybe some more second round picks down the line. But Memphis is doing a really good job of trying to restructure their team. So I get it for both sides in terms of why they did the move, but it's still an awkward fit in Portland.
To follow up, do you believe that? All right, first, do you think how much do you think Dame has left in the tank coming off the Achilles injury?
Yeah.
And secondly, do you believe that Dame will be a good mentor, so to speak, for Ja, or will Ja allow Dame to be that type of mentor that maybe he needed, or he pretty much his vet, because he really had no vet in Memphis
Yeah.
when he was coming up. So, do you believe that Ja will be receptive? And as far as from what I know from the outside looking in, Dame seemed like the type of dude that, all right, listen, which go, I've been in the league, I know how things go. Maybe I might not have the reputation that you have, but listen, I'm from Oakland, so I know how things get down. So, do you think he'll be receptive?
I think that's a great point. And something that I hadn't really thought too much about. But as I'm talking about the age disparity, yeah, that probably makes a lot of sense. And another reason why Portland felt comfortable in making that move. And if they keep Drew Holiday as well, too, another veteran guy, again, while Drew has not reached the same levels as Ja Morant has in terms of his overall explosiveness, Drew Holiday is a two-time champion. So, I mean, these are great mentors, I think, for Ja. And you need that kind of like that smelling salts, if you will. I think that's what's going to end up happening. And a lot of it is still about his health. I think his off the court stuff is pretty much behind him, but now he's got to keep his body right. And so, if he goes to Portland, I don't know if they keeps his head down, but like listens to the teachings, if you will, of like these two great veterans, for as long as those two great veterans are in place, this could be a nice reclamation project for the Portland Trailblazers that resets their timeline. And Dame has, by all accounts, ever since he was a rookie, he's shown leadership skills. While LaMarcus Aldridge, when he was there, Marcus didn't love the fact that Dame was coming in and was as good as he was. Dame was reaching out by all reports. It's like, hey, bro, like, hey, happy to be on the team. Let's work. Right. So Dame has always been very welcoming to any free agent or any player that comes on this roster. And I don't see Ja Morant being any different. And now he's got somebody with that a level of immense talent to come on this roster. And the Blazers can really do something with this because they do have a great leader in Damian Lillard and potentially Drew Holiday for as long as he's there, too. So that's a great point by you for sure.
Thank you. I try. Doubling back. Giannis to the Heat. First, where did you think Giannis was going to land up during this Giannis sweepstakes? And two, do you think he he ended up in the best place for him? Number one, and number two, do you think the team could have done better than Giannis?
Starting with your last question, no. Living in South Florida, Miami has been chasing stars for a while. They've missed out on a lot, including the aforementioned Damian Lillard. So they've been big game hunting for a minute. So they are very excited down here. Let me tell you, like ecstatic. I did think it ultimately was always going to be Miami. To be honest with you, I got dissuaded, I think, by all the noise that happened when Jaylen Brown was named with thrown out there, and it seemed like Boston was really, really close. And depending on who you listen to, Bill Simmons or whatever the case would be, like what Brad Stevens ultimately was willing to give up second, third year for Giannis, like all those things. I thought in the closing hours, like it was going to be Boston, but when it ended up being Miami, I was like, well, that's where I originally thought this was going to go. And I'm not really sure who the Heat are right now. Like, there's more moves to make. I'm concerned about the spacing, especially if they get into the LeBron sweepstakes. I'm just like, well, why would they do that? Because I get the basketball IQ would be there, but they have no spacing, like zero. So, I think you would just load up on that team. But I think it would be interesting from the hype standpoint to kind of watch. But Giannis is where he ultimately wanted to be. He's all over social media today as we're recording and talking about how he met his wife in Miami and all this other stuff like that too. So, hey, like you said, I'm kind of agnostic to it right now. They have a lot more moves to make, but I'm glad for the Heat that they've gotten their franchise superstar and a name that they've been chasing for a little while here now. As Pat Riley is 80 years old, 80. So he wanted to make one more big splash, before the sun sets on his basketball career.
Kawhi to the Raptors. It seems like from what I was reading and watching, it seems like this move was probably in the making way before anybody thought it was even on the radar. I don't know how true that is or not, but it just seems like nobody's like, "Huh, what? Kawhi went back to the Raptors? Kawhi went back to Toronto?" It's like, no, Kawhi went back to Toronto. All right. Now, first, I don't think it. I really think the time that he spent in LA had came and went. Like it was time for him to move on, unfortunately. Just bad luck. Him getting injured, and then it was just always something. There was always something every year. A lot of times it was his knee. But now with all the controversy with him getting the quote unquote the no-show job and all, listen, if anybody thinks that these players don't get some type of residual income from any place else, but nothing, I got a bridge to sell you in Crown Heights, and there's no bridges in Crown Heights, so miss me with that. Listen, great reporting to find that out. Pulitzer Prize winning, I believe, great, but miss me with all that. Now, Kawhi to the Raptors is interesting because, as far as I know, they didn't really give up much. I mean, they gave up Bi, Brandon Ingram, but to me that's like a wash. Like, all right, we're giving up our quote unquote supposed big time scorer for a proven scorer and a champion, but yet you kept all the ancillary pieces around. What do you think about this trade, and where do you think Toronto could slide in with a healthy Kawhi Leonard next year?
There's a lot of people really excited about this move, and I'm taking the wait and see approach, to be honest with you right now. I think the Raptors are better. The Raptors could have beaten the Cleveland Cavaliers, ironically, if they had even just one more reliable scorer. Ingram was struggling throughout the course of that series, quickly didn't even play. So Kawhi significantly raises their ceiling in terms of that in a late game closer, assuming he's healthy. So like that's the biggest thing. So the one season here now where he looked like himself, looked like an all-NBA player, I get why that can get people excited. I'm still thinking about the last 4 years that we've seen where, he hasn't been himself or it plays half the season. The Raptors were the first to load manage him in a way. And I think that's where he's also got the level of trust at that organization, even though Masai Ujiri is not there anymore. But he trusts that organization as to be able to figure out how to utilize him to potentially keep him healthy. I was surprised, given how fast he was on the first thing smoking to leave there, that he was willing to kind of come back. But hey, who says you can't go home again? So shout out to the Raptors. I was worried about what their ceiling was going to be because they're also becoming very expensive as well too as a team that was probably going to be middling. I think this should firmly keep them in the playoff conversation, out of the play-in, as a top 6 team. But where that ultimately lands, I'm unsure. And I don't know if the Scotty Barnes you saw in the playoffs is a Scotty Barnes that is that guy. Like, there's a lot of hope, a lot of like, hey, he's really going to be this multi kind of creator, defender, rebounder, passer that, because he was giving Evan Mobley the business, in that Cleveland series. Can he do that for an entire season? And can Kawhi be healthy? That remains to be seen, right? And how does RJ Barrett slot into all of this here now, too? I don't know. But I think Toronto is better. I just don't know how much better they are in the Eastern Conference. So if I were to hedge my bet, I'd say they're probably still a 6 or 5 seed, but ultimately a team that can be very, very dangerous when the playoffs actually start.
What I think is important about the Kawhi acquisition to the Raptors is it slots everybody where they're supposed to be. Nobody's being asked to be more than they can. BI was supposed to be that ultimate scorer. It didn't work out that way. RJ Barrett is not a number one. And in a lot of ways, he's not really a number 2. He's a solid number 3. Quickly from his days in New York, he disappears. When the stakes get high, he disappears. He never had a great playoff with us. He's a good regular season player. He'll give you quality minutes during the regular season. He'll show off in the regular season, but he's not that dude. Now, shout out to Desmond Powell. He's always been high on Scotty Barnes, and I really believe that he is going to be pretty much the canary in the coal mine of, all right, wherever way they're going to go is going to be based on Scotty Barnes, not really going to be based on Kawhi. So, like you said, if Scotty can be that dude that he was in the playoffs this year, and you have a semi-healthy Kawhi, I think they can possibly make some noise, and it leaves everybody where they're slotted where it's supposed to be. But if he doesn't take that or keep that next step that he took forward, and Kawhi is asked to do 85-90% of the load that he's not really physically capable of doing, like you said, they might be a 6 seed. They might be low and be quote unquote on a list of disappointing teams in 2026, 2027. But that's how I think about that. But last but not least, when it comes to free agency, or in his case, free agency, who would have ever thought there would be a free agent program, a free agent season, and this man would be the last person that we speak about? LeBron James. LeBron James is a free agent. He's not returning. He informed the Lakers. I like the way he informed the Lakers. Like the writing wasn't on the wall when they acquired Luka. The writing wasn't on the wall when they gave Austin Reeves the money. But he informed the Lakers that he was not interested, so he was going to move on with his career. He wasn't interested in coming back. And how gracious of him to do that. Also, how gracious of him and Rich Paul to let the Knicks know that, you know what, if y'all won the championship, since y'all won the championship, I'm not going to go there. I don't want to mess things up. I understand how things are. If y'all wouldn't have won, I would have definitely came to New York. But since y'all won, dude, if you wanted to come to New York, you would have came back. You would have came to New York with the decision. That's a lot of people feel that my dislike for LeBron James started at the decision. Actually, it didn't. The year prior, when they got bumped at the Eastern Conference Finals with Orlando, when it was supposed to be Kobe and LeBron, 24, 23. Y'all people remember me? When that was supposed to be the finals, and LeBron didn't hold up his end of the bargain, and they lost in 5 games, and they should have got swept if it wasn't for the last second in game 1, I believe. When he walked off the court in his feelings and did not chop it up, did not show the respect that Orlando earned, that's what soured me with LeBron James back then. Personally, because my thing is like, yo, you're the pace of the league. All right, fine. It's not, it is their fault that you didn't underachieve. They beat you. So, listen, all right, dap it up. Salute. Keep it moving. I got you next season, right? So that's where he starts sounding with me. I'm like, all right, so he's the chosen one, but he's not really a chosen one sportsmanship wise. Because I mean, sportsmanship can be overrated at times, but to me, if you're gonna be the face of the league, all right, you're gonna be the face of the league. Like people sometimes say that since Kobe's passing, a lot of things have been glossed over. Like, oh, it's been magnified about the Mamba mentality. Listen, as far as I know, maybe I'm mistaken, but when Kobe took his in the finals, listen, all right, I'm going to lick my wounds. Kobe never made no excuses for losing. Like if he lost
Right.
it, yo, which one they got us. All right, listen, that means I just got to grind even harder in the offseason. But neither here nor there. Where do you think LeBron James is going to end up? Who should want him? And more importantly, at age going to be 42, why is he still playing?
That's the great question. Like there's a certain level of glory that he is potentially chasing here. Whether you believe it's rings or not, I'm not really sure. I think it's just he likes the limelight. He's having a hard time walking away from it. The reports are now that why he's not interested in money is because he will be able to get a significant deal in terms to film what will potentially be his last season. And so he doesn't need the money from the organization. When you think about who should want him, I think where can he be additive where it's not a distraction? Jaylen Brown had me on his program over the course of the weekend on Mad Dog Radio. And, we kind of came to the determination where who should want him? Probably Minnesota and maybe even Denver. And I think those are two teams where he could really do a lot of good to raise their potential floor, specifically in Minnesota. But LaMelo might drive him, batshit crazy. So that take that with a grain of salt. But Denver playing with the Joker would be immense, and they obviously needed some influx of life. Right now, we know the betting odds are Cleveland, Golden State, and Miami. I think it's going to be Cleveland. I think that's just what it's going to be, coming back there for a third time. If he wants like the overall happiness, he really wants to play with Steph. So I can see him doing the Golden State thing. Miami's the one that I just don't understand. Like, as I said earlier, like I just don't like it. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. I don't see why they would want to do that. And I can't imagine Pat Riley and company would want to sign up for the LeBron circus with Giannis there for the first year. Like, I just don't see why they'd want all that into their orbit. So for me, Denver and Minnesota make the most sense team-wise in terms of like chasing a championship. But I think it will be probably Cleveland or Golden State, to be honest with you.
I can see Golden State for two reasons. Logistic wise, he's been on the West Coast for 8 years, right? Now people be like, well, the type of money LeBron got, it doesn't matter. Get the PJ, get the, I understand that, but literally, his family, he put his roots on the West Coast. He put his roots in California for the last 8 years. I can't, even if this is probably his last season, perhaps, I can't see him really going. But the only place he would go if it's not on the West Coast is, like you said, Cleveland, because like that's a perfect ending to the LeBron James story. He started in Cleveland, he left, he grew, he matured, he came back to Cleveland, he got them their first championship. He left. I gave it to you. I come back to finish my career. I could see that. On that team, I could also see that because, first of all, that's the only place that he will go that they will roll out the red carpet like, LeBron, do what you want. Listen, hands off. This your team. This your city. You already know the run of the place. This your third time around. No problem. Golden State, it's not his team. It's Steph's team. It's always Steph's team. Would it fit work? Yeah. Are they winning a championship? No. It would just be like, bucket list. I got to play with Steph. Fine. I know I'm not getting a ring. I got to play with Steph. We're gonna have some fun. Steve Kerr. He'll let me rock because me and him got a good rapport. Whatever. Draymond Green. That's my boy. That's my bro. I could see that.
Yeah.
But the two teams that you mentioned, Denver and Minnesota. Minnesota, fit wise, I could see it, but yeah, there's the LaMelo factor. Yeah, that just wouldn't work. It just wouldn't work. Basketball IQ wise, him in Denver. That imagine that amount of IQ on one team with the size, with the skill of Joker, and LeBron having not minding taking the back seat and just literally loving to play with somebody that plays the right way, that really can see the game as if he sees it, and he's not really about the ego either. Joker, like, listen, I play this, I play ball because I get paid. And tell you the truth, I really don't even care. I'd rather be back home. This is freedom. So I'm good. But yeah, Denver would be a good thing. Before we move on, this is a question it popped in my mind as soon as we start talking about Golden State. And just a little history. But do you believe, well, in your opinion, did Draymond ruin that franchise? The amount of respect and loyalty that they have to Draymond Green, do you believe they ruined the franchise as far as the duration of Curry's tenure there?
In short, I'm going to say no. I think his machinations all have a play into the deterioration of that. But you also have to remember that Golden State had multiple bites at the apple from a draft pick standpoint, and they messed things up. Like they tried to merge two timelines together. So is Golden State a desired destination? Maybe not in the same way that it could have been, had maybe Draymond not had some of the things there. But for all that they've done and all the championships that they've won as a team and as an organization, you can kind of understand why they might have kowtowed themselves to Draymond. But time comes for us all. Everybody has a bad day. Everybody makes some bad decisions here and there. And the Warriors have made their fair share. And, what they were able to do, what is that now? In 2022, when they won the last championship, that was nothing short of miraculous. That was nothing short of miraculous. But it all went off the rails from there. And, while they haven't been able to get back into a real sense of championship level contention, we'll see what ends up happening here. And if LeBron comes there to chase that dream of, like you said, to like, hey, let me check it off my bucket list. I got to play with Steph. Jimmy Butler comes back at some point, presumably next year. Yes, they're the oldest team in the NBA. If that happens, they might still be the oldest team in the NBA, even if LeBron doesn't join that. But it'll be a hell of a story. It'll be something to watch, and it give us, lots of innocence to kind of talk about. But Draymond, man, like, not my favorite dude, and he's not a lot of people's favorite dude. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to lay that solely at his feet. That organization, like, everyone plays a part in terms of like how good or not good they are right now. But Draymond, yeah, he didn't help situations, I think, in the latter years of this.
To tie a bow on that, I might be in the minority, but I am one who, similarly, I won't lay it all at Draymond's feet, but at the same time, I put some of the blame on Steph. Because Steph allowed it. Things don't go the way they go in Golden State without Steph's approval, right? So for them to have the two timeline thing, yeah, that was kind of, crazy, but it had a possibility of working, or at least working more than where they're at now. You left pretty much an heir apparent, let him go based on the actions of Draymond Green, right? You like they're already a pay pool, and you can't tell me that I don't want to go too far into this because this could be a podcast in itself, but the two roads of the franchise and Poole, that inflection point right there, Poole has never been the same player. Period.
Facts. Yeah.
I don't believe he's ever been the same person. Period. Right? And that's strictly, that's because of Draymond, and that's because Steph allowed it. That organization allowed that to happen and wanted to sweep everything under the rug for their quest for another championship, right? Steph allowing, Clay wanted to leave, but Clay didn't want to leave. Clay wanted be respected. And they was like, you know what? If you feel like you can get more money elsewhere, go get some money elsewhere. They didn't show Klay the same amount of respect that I believe that Klay deserved. You know, and once again, if Steph wanted to keep it going, like, listen, all right, Klay, you might have to come off the bench, or you might have to be the sixth man or whatever, blah 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 blah. We can make it work. I'm quite sure Klay would have said, you know what, I'm down for it. Splash brother number one, I'm down for it. But it didn't happen, and Kerr's complicit also, because as much as Draymond's like, yeah, Kerr tied my hands and everything, Kerr allowed a lot of things to happen. Kevin Durant could possibly still be on that team, or maybe they could have got 3 out of 4 championships if the culture was what they really wanted the culture to be. If the culture was what they wanted everybody else to believe the culture was. And I feel like a lot of it in hindsight, you can look back and that culture was fugazi. And as much as I'm a Steph fan, I put some of that blame on Steph. Like, dude, like, I get it. That's your man. That's your man. Y'all gonna ride together, but at the same time, if you can't tell your man, if you can't tell your brother, yo, you were dead wrong, I gotta check you on that. Then how close really can y'all be? If you cannot be allowed to check your brother when he's wrong. Like my brother, darn. No, today made 3 years. My brother passed. My bro.
Yeah.
But he was the only dude that could check me, right? Like I people could say I make me think I'm which on this live wire or off the hinge or whatever. To a certain degree, I was, but to a certain degree, I wasn't, right? But he was the only person that if he said, "Yo, Mike, you wrong, you dead wrong," there's no but. Nah, look. If Rue told me I was wilding, I was wilding. If Rue told me, yo, second, which go think that over, I need to think that over. Man, a few words, but his words had a lot of gravity to them. And on top of the fact, that's my bro. That's my brother. I don't even say that's my best friend. That was my brother for over 30 years. He knew me. He knew original Mike. He knew Mike before father Mike, before husband Mike, before podcaster Mike, before city worker Mike. He knew Mike, right? So he was the only person that I had left from my family or whatever. So I say all that to say, if your brothership, if your friendship can't survive you being checked by somebody that cares about you, then you gotta reassess that relationship that you think it is, because all of it's the facade. None of it is real, But I don't know. I didn't want me to get on my soapbox with that, but nah,
it's your show, brother.
No, it's that situation in Golden State, I just feel like was been self-sabotaged for the last 5 years. Due to hubris, due to arrogance, due to neglect, the whole nine. But forget about them. We're talking about you, my man, and we're gonna get into the nitty-gritty to start wrapping this up. Mr. Warren Shaw. Who is Warren Shaw? But more important, matter of fact, not more importantly, what made you get into the media space? But more importantly, who is Warren Shaw? See, I had to flip that around, but yeah.
It's a complicated story, to be honest with you. I want to say, I was a young boy thinking about all these things, but the short version of this was, I think I wanted to work in media, or I wanted to work for a team. And, I don't know if you know this, but I did my internship with the New York Knicks way back in the day. And it was an interesting time. It was a really interesting time. And I got firsthand experience of what it means to work for an organization. I was a basketball operations intern. And ultimately, for various reasons, whatever, I ended up having to I completed my internship, and I thought I was going to be able to stay there and work for work into a job. But I was there literally 25 years ago, and I was signing paperwork when the planes flew into the tower. And New York was in a very weird space. The Knicks were in a very weird space at that time as well. They were losing money. And so when had Had I not been graduating literally that December, had I been graduating that spring, I might have been able to stay on, but they couldn't keep me on from a administrative standpoint because they needed me to be an intern, in essence, to make their books work. Like they fired the marketing person, or I should say they let go, for cost saving measures. Like there was all types of things that were going on with the organization. Anyway, I'm rambling now. I wanted to work in sports. The Knicks organization, gave me an opportunity as an intern. I left the internship, went to work for Alonzo Mourning in his charity organization. And, that became a really great opportunity where I understood what it meant to just kind of like get back into the community. So working for Zoe, I stayed there longer than I was supposed to, air quote, because he was doing a South Florida thing. Then he took me to West Virginia to work that event up there too. It was really, really cool. Got to do some really amazing things. Met Allen Iverson at that event. Anyway, long story short, left there and then just still kind of had the urge to kind of get back into sports. So while I was taking some, more air quote regular jobs, I was like, damn, well, how can I stay adjacent to this? So I started writing, and at the time it was a kind of the blog era, and the blog era was like, bloggers weren't respected because I didn't go to school for journalism. But I was reaching out. I was a fairly talented writer, even though I didn't go to school for journalism. And I just got some opportunities that, went my way. I worked for a site called Pro Sports Blogging, started going to Orlando Magic games. That's a whole other story in that of itself as well, too. Solicited realgm.com, got to do some freelance work for RealGM. Solicited Celtics Life, got to do some work for Celtics Life, as a Celtics fan. Got on Yahoo Contributor Network. So I was doing some stuff for Yahoo, covering basketball and boxing at the time. Parlayed that into Dime Magazine. And then Dime Magazine was probably, like the biggest outlet that I wrote for. Also wrote for my guy, Nick, Coach Nick, with his basketball side as well. But Dime led me to a lot of different opportunities, man. I started to meet agents, talk to players on a more regular basis, and realize, hey, man, this is cool. This is really dope. And while I was still trying to pursue and maybe find a way to get back into the front office of some team at some point, I also realized I wanted to have a family, and then working for a team is very, very demanding. You're on the road a lot as well, too, especially what I wanted to do in terms of like potentially being a general manager or a scout. And I was like, man, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that. I want to be able to have a wife and, maybe some kids, et cetera, et cetera. So I kept with the writing thing. And then my man Cal came to me one day, literally, I guess 14 years ago now, and said, hey, you want to start a podcast? And like many people said, I didn't know what that was. What is that? And, the rest from there is kind of history, man. We started the baseline, and I parlayed my Dime magazine writing, brought some interviews into our show to give it some credibility and notoriety. I'd record our interviews and then insert that into the show. And it just kind of like took off from there, man. And the media space has been very, very kind to me. I've had a lot of great people help me out, but I've grinded, man. I'm not here to brag, but I've gotten it out the mud. I've sent 1,000,001 emails, been denied, ignored, like everybody else. Like it's difficult. But for whatever reason, because I care about it, I've been able to, fight through some of those things and some of those negativity and continue to kind of push forward. And I've had some really, really amazing times here in the media space, man. So it's a long-winded way of saying I am where I'm at right now, kind of skipping over the 19 part as well, a little bit, obviously, but it's been a journey. It's been a really great journey. I've had a lot of great people who helped me. A lot of people supported me. Ruined a lot of relationships as well too, specifically with certain girls I was dating at the time, and I was pursuing the dream, and I'm going here, I'm doing this, I got to write. I'm staying up to 2-3 o'clock in the morning trying to write about the Orlando Magic when I didn't even care about them. But that's what it took. That's what it took to try to get to that next level, bro. So yeah, man, sorry, kind of took you on a winding road, but that's a little bit about how I got to where I got to.
Listen, you should know by now. I love to wind the road. That's the road I most of the time travel. My daughter, my oldest daughter, it's a one thing that we have. That one of the things we have is sometimes she'll come home and she'll ask me how I'm doing or whatever, and she'll ask me. Let's say she asked me a question, and I'll start answering the question. And then I'll go all the way around. And then maybe about 10 minutes later, literally 10 minutes later, I'll get back to the subject and answer the question. And she's like, I don't understand. You have a knack of doing that. You start talking about this, that, and the third, and then right before I'm about to like, did my father forget? You'll answer the question. I'm like,
Bring it back. Yeah, bring it back.
I got introduced to you through short sports, right? I want to say, oh, this is at least more than 5 years ago. So I want to say you were doing a draft recap, NBA draft recap on YouTube, and Mo put me on. He was like, yeah, my boy, my boy Ron, he's doing this, he's doing the draft recap. It's on YouTube. Sent me the link. So that's when I first got introduced to your work. I'm like, okay, all right, and I can't remember exactly how long ago it was, but it was a while. So I asked that to say, with all the situations that you just ran down, from internships to writing to blogging to the baseline show, is it 15 years strong? Exactly, or
he'll be 15 years next season. So January will be 15 years in, and yeah, man, it's been a mission. We've seen the league really transform in a lot of ways, and we've transformed a lot. Grayer now as well too. So, but yeah, brother, it's been a while. And Shaw Sports was, my foray to try to like, hey, let me see if I can get into like truly like sports media and run my own entity. And it's hard when I know I didn't want to do everything. Like I wanted to focus on basketball, and I was really into boxing at that time, but I was going to need help. So I was, recruiting interns and people to help write, people looking to get their start so that they can write on baseball and they can write on football. And Mo was doing baseball for me for a little while as well too. And Cal was starting a podcast that he was trying to do some baseball and stuff for a little while too. And, Shaw Sports really kind of came out of that, like, hey man, I want to work in the sports business. Right. And my appetite has not shifted as much, but it's developed. I've matured. And there's other things I want out of life outside of sports as well too. But Shaw Sports was the bridge also while I was writing and beginning my podcasting to really kind of figure out like who could I really ultimately become, in this thing we call life.
Do you believe that initial foray into that was the launching point was the launching point of 19 Media Group? Like, tell me a little bit about, or tell the audience a little bit about how 19 Media Group came to fruition.
And 19 is really the ideation of, former co-founder Jabari Davis and I. So I was doing the Shaw Sports thing because Shaw Sports was still even around when 19 initially first kind of launched. But Jabari and I met on Twitter at the time. We had never actually met in person before, but we shared similar basketball circles. He was really doing his thing, as a writer. I was, doing mine, at least so I thought, at the time when we kind of came across paths. He came on our show a couple of times and we just kind of formulated a bond. And then certainly a little bit right after the pandemic, because it was 2021, we were just talking and he was just like, man, he was getting kind of jerked around at his podcasting hosting site and network. We, as the Baseline, had been on maybe 4 different networks in all the years at that time and had seen various results, but a lot of promises that didn't really deliver on things. And he was like, listen, man, I'm about to get out of my contract, with this group. He's like, I was like, yeah, well, we're not on the contract right now anymore. We're just hosted over a Spreaker. And he's like, hey, well, what if we started our own thing? And then he kind of planted the seed, from there. And then having been in Shaw Sports previously, and I was like, yeah, I see how these things could potentially work, how it could get done. But, Shaw Sports was more of a writing entity as 19 was becoming a podcasting entity. Now I think it's truly more of a media entity as well. But Jabari and I spoke sometime in whatever it was, probably maybe March or April 2021. And he's like, hey, man, let's just do it. And we started like figuring out what it would mean to incorporate, create a logo. Who do we want to be on the team? Who does he know? Who do I know? And that was kind of the ideation of it. So I can't even say it was my idea. It wasn't my idea. It was Jabari's, but it came from, kind of us almost like, Suge Knight, kind of situation tired of these people, dancing on the tracks or whatever like that. And we said, come over to 19 Media Group Records. We started our own joint, and that's how that shit went down. Excuse my French.
No problem. No, that the way you just put that, that's real dope. Tired of all the people not promoting your podcast.
Yeah.
Come on to 19. Come on to 19 Media Group.
100%. And Jabari's from the West Coast too, so it's so appropriate, man. Like crazy, right? So that is really him, bro. And we just had so many great people like yourself to kind of support us and kind of keep this thing, lifted off. And sure, there's been struggles in the whole nine, but we're proud. Like we have every reason to be proud of what we've accomplished. Multiple shows have been nominated for awards, featured on lists. Like not every podcast or a podcast network can say that. Like they can't, and while our numbers aren't always the biggest and, getting millions of downloads or bringing in millions of dollars, we do it for the right reasons. And the right people have found us. So I'm extremely proud of the people who are rocking with us and those who've come and gone as well too. Like, hey, everyone played their part to get 19 to where it is right now.
I guess the best follow-up for that to end in the conversation would be, where do you see the 19 Media Group as a whole in the next 5 years, since we just made 5 years this past Juneteenth?
Yeah, we're going to continue to grow in terms of the quality of the content. I told Mo, I laid out to Mo a very ambitious plan sometime in, I want to say February, March. And I was like, man, I think I can see us doing this. I can see us doing that. We're talking to a lot of different people behind the scenes. So podcast will always be at the heart of what we do, but we've branded or moved into some event coverage as well too now. We'll start doing some event recaps. I'm very ambitious. I think at some point, maybe in the next 5 years, maybe we'll start to do some documentary type things, like some film production as well, in addition to the podcasting. We've already kind of forayed into some writing as well too. So continuing to lift the brand, create different avenues and verticals for people to be successful. We want to have more female creators of color, even more specifically as well, join us within the next 5 years. But hopefully we'll continue to just create good content and be good people, because it doesn't work if we're not good people and not good human beings, think to each other. If we're chasing clicks, if we're chasing the salaciousness, then I would say we've lost our way. So, I want us to be and have integrity in everything that we do. And I think, the team that's here right now is very, very focused on that. And anybody who we add needs to be kind of in that same mindset as well too.
I definitely agree. What makes me proud to be able to work with y'all and to be a part of y'all in any facet that I can is not even just the fact that it's everybody plays their part, but it's not a collection of individuals, if that makes sense. Yeah. Like, you said, matter of fact, from my point of view, look from the outside in, you have yourself with your media background, with your connections in the NBA, with your connections outside of sports, and being ambitious and always trying to grow the brand, always trying to go bigger and better and just evolve. Me personally, Mo, like, to me, he's tremendous when it comes to research, right? Like, I learned so much from him in the last 5 years. About 4 or 5 years, just doing the dirty work, doing the research, looking at the numbers, going and staying up and reading these books and getting these stats and making sure, listen, we're going to put this out there. It has to be accurate. It can't just say, oh yeah, it's 125. He dropped 125 points last week. No, there's no way he dropped 125 points. Yeah, I'm exaggerating. No, it can't be like that. Him and Willie, they were doing the hip hop hidden gems. I loved that show for as thorough as they were. Just the storytelling aspect, especially Brother Freeman. Like, listen, I need to reach out to him more. Like, he touches me in ways that I can't even explain. Like, I love Brother Freeman.
Yes, sir.
So Brother Freeman, I gotta reach out to you and let you know that. But yo, brother, I really appreciate you more than you know. You have Tyler and his exuberance and going above and beyond and trying to make not only his entity the best it could be, but always being supportive, always being that first viewer, that first listener, that first person to give you feedback, positive feedback, always having your back. Dez, multi-talented, like Dez is the young OG for real. Like the narratives that he's done on the videos that y'all put out for commemorating the 5 years. I'm just like, yo, that's that dude right there.
For real.
Yeah, like I just love it. Like, which go Joe Brown coming into the fold. Like I revere him so much. Like I just do. I don't even ask me why. Like he speaks is like just gospel. Like I didn't even realize we was in the same building. And like I went to the Knicks game in February, and he was actually in the building. I saw him put the flick on IG, and I'm like, oh shoot, yo, I was there. I was all you were down there, but I was all the way up there. We was in the same building.
Game? Sacramento?
Yes. So I was like, wow, Brad with all the technical things that he does, and he brings in Jessica and everything that she does. Like, everybody plays their part, plays it well, and it's never everybody's always supportive of each other. Whether it's vocal or not. My thing is, a lot of times everything doesn't have to be vocal, and nothing is ever a tit for tat. Like, well, since you did this for me, that I'm going to do this for you. No, it's always based on wants, not, oh well, I have to do this because I have to repay the favor or what have you. It's always genuine, and that's why, like I said in the beginning, and I would end it by saying it again. That's why this particular episode is very important to me, because in a lot of ways it brings a lot of things full circle. For it to be July 2026, and I'm sitting here in my present state in my life, very grateful for everything that I've gone through and progress, and for me and you to be able to chop it up just on a platform, period, and for me and you to be able to chop it up on the platform, talk about NBA and everything, and nobody on the network knew. And it's a chef's kiss to me. It's a chef's kiss. On top of that, with just over 90 minutes, that means I didn't hold you 2 hours. So therefore, it's an overall win. But yeah, more importantly, I appreciate you, brother. Please let the folks out there know where they can find you at. Any projects that are coming up that I don't know about, you can don't feel free. Let people know. And the floor's yours.
I think first and foremost, again, thank you. Right, like I mean that as sincerely as possible. I want to say you're always authentic, always. But I found your look back, on Hidden Gems Football, like that 2-parter, so extremely reflective. And I think when anybody grabs this microphone and bears their soul in the way that you did and consistently have done over the years, that's no small feat. So continue to grow as a human being and as an individual. I'm proud, of the person that you are and are still becoming, because we're all evolving. We should be continuing to evolve. And you've gone through a lot, as a human being and as a man. And I recognize that. I appreciate you for bearing your soul in the way that you do. I appreciate you for the contributions that you continue to bring to 19 and working with my other brother, while not by blood. I've known Mo for a very, very long time. And, that is my guy. And, he speaks so highly of you, and the rapport and chemistry the two that you have is palpable. It's felt, and it helps bring and uplift the network in a real and meaningful way. So kudos to you. continue to grow, continue to strive, continue to be a great husband, working man, family person, and podcaster, and all the things, that you are, because we see you and it's needed. And as we close out, shout out to everybody in the 19 Media Group family. New folks who have joined us all too, Rashad Grove and Uriah Young, with their show Hoops on Film. It's going to continue to grace our airwaves. So, shout out to that. Look out for that. Can't wait for Jessica to get back in the lab with Inclusive Pathways. Just launched inside the Wedding Planner's Mind. Irene just came back for season 3 of her show, and it's a really, really great season. All of them are great. But even though she's talking about wedding planning, this is about building systems, for your business and not doing things by yourself. So she's like, her first episode is only 15 minutes long, but you can get a lot out of that. Like, there's nobody on this network who's not doing their damn thing and cannot provide value in some real meaningful way. Don't forget about the Mixed Company as well too. Luis and Jameson and everything that they got rocking and rolling. Like, it's a lot of love, man. It's a lot of great people doing their thing, and I'm excited. And we're continuing to build and expand. Like, shout out to the Sports Chasers. Shout out to OTC Media, like our network. Shout out to our guy Joe Cardozo and Nuts and Bolts Sports. Like we, this is a family. While 19 is its own entity, we are definitely family oriented in every way. And you're going to start to see a lot of cross promotions throughout the course of the network, and things on social media as well too. So thank you one last time for allowing us to be a part of your life, allowing me specifically to be on your show here today. Long time coming. Hope it's not the last time we get to communicate. And when I'm in New York next, I'll be in New York twice within the next 3 to 4 months. So definitely actually got to catch up, man, in person, live and in living color.
Oh, listen, I'm down. I'm down. Shoot. Just let your boy know. Let me know. Matter of fact, listen, Mo, love you. No shade whatsoever. But just like we linked up to do this, he can link up and then I could just pop up and be like, yo, Mike, I didn't know you was going, aha.
Well, real talk. And maybe this is like some business stuff offline that you should consider coming to the podcast conference that Mo and I are going to go to. So it's going to be in New York. So it's podcast movement in September. So that's why I'm coming up again in September anyway. So you're podding, man. Just get some information. You can be there, boots on the ground, promote your show, promote everything that you have kind of going on too. Find guests, be a guest on certain things. We'll be in the building kind of like percolating. So that's on a business side, but obviously just on a man-to-man side, we got to link up even outside of that too. But let's keep things locked up, bro.
Yeah, no problem. That sounds good. So that brings us to the end of another edition. Not just another edition, a special edition of the Salty Thoughts of Mike Step podcast. I'd like to thank each and every one of y'all for making me and this here podcast the one y'all choose to view and the one y'all choose to listen to. Even though I've been slacking up on the audio uploads, but there's a reason for that. I've done a little bit more lives lately.
Those lives are popping.
Thank you, but I have to speak to you offline, off air about that, because it's a thin line. There's a line that you have to steady on that, and I need to kind of focus on that. But neither here nor there. The lives I don't upload those audio wise. Those are live. You see them, you know about them. Fine, full fledged, even sprinkle salts. Yeah, I'll sprinkle those up. But regardless, please like, subscribe, press the notification button. So next time I decide to go live or drop a full-fledged episode, you will be the first ones to hear it. And with all that being said, before I leave, one last thing, because I'll be remiss, because I just spoke to my sister. We just spent the afternoon with my sister, Miss Whitney Page. Please check out. I have to promo this. 1 minute.
If you are seeing this video, you're probably a woman who does everything for everybody. And the last thing that you should be stressed about is your hair. I'm Whitney Page, Sister Locks consultant and interlocking extraordinaire based in New Jersey, now accepting new clients.
So who am I for? I'm for the professionals. I'm for the moms. I'm for the entrepreneurs. This transformation is for you if you're looking for a get up and go, hassle-free process that offers better manageability for your natural hair. And if you're the woman who values her time, quality, and professionalism, this is the chair that you need to be in. Many, many years ago, when I was pregnant with my child, I suffered a very deep depression. And the only time I ever felt good was when I got to go and get my hair done. It was transforming. And I wanted to be able, I decided then and there that I needed to create that space for other women. And that started my hair journey. So here we are, 17 years later, and I don't just provide hair care, but I make sure I provide an environment where you come and you feel tranquil and you feel soft, just for the move. So when you come sit in my chair, good hair is a guarantee. But more than that, it's a moment for peace and tranquility, a moment just for you. Looking forward to seeing you.
Well, guess what? She just saw us today. She saw us today. Listen, when I say Sister Paige, Whitney Page, from out of Bayonne, New Jersey, been part of the family for 12, 13 years. Child she spoke about, they went together. They went to school with my youngest, Main Event K, and beautiful family, beautiful human being. I will have her information down in the description below for how y'all can get in touch with Whitney Page. Not just a hairstyle, but a lifestyle, a life coach, if you will. So yeah. So with all that being said, we're gonna get out of here. I will check y'all later. Goodbye.